Joining me now is New York State Assemblyman and New York City mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani. Assemblyman, thanks so much for being here. First, I want to start with the scenes out of Southern California over the weekend and into today. We now have this news that the president has mobilized Marines to be on the ground there. This after ICE raids in Los Angeles County. This is something that could easily happen in New York City. How would you be handling this situation if you were the mayor?
I would be calling it what it is, which is authoritarianism. This is yet another example of Donald Trump seeking to rip the fabric up of our cities and our countries, of attacking immigrants across this nation, as well as the very notion that so many of us Americans hold dear when we think about our Constitution. And we need to have a mayor that can look authoritarianism in the eye and not see a reflection of himself. And as the first immigrant mayor of this city in generations, I will do exactly that. I will stand up for the people of this city and make it clear to Donald Trump that he will find no collaborator here that he has found in Eric Adams.
So what should New York City be doing right now?
I think right now what we need to do is continue to follow the example of leaders across the country, including one that I'm so proud to have been endorsed by, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, in actually fighting for the things that we believe in and making it clear that in deploying the National Guard, Donald Trump is not only reversing the clear precedent where governors ask that of the president as opposed to the president imposing that upon a governor, but also that Democrats finally stand up and make it clear that this is not something that has any consent of anyone beyond the White House in Washington, D.C.
You have in the past called for abolishing ICE. As mayor, would you try to block the agency from conducting any actions in New York City? And how could you even make that possible?
Well, I think you can just look at the example of ICE raids that are happening here in New York City, because while we are not seeing the scale of deployment that we've seen in Los Angeles, we still are seeing New Yorkers being disappeared and detained, whether from their apartment building lobby or whether they're going for a routine immigration check-in at Federal Plaza. And too often under Eric Adams, we've seen NYPD units like the Strategic Response Group be deployed to assist in those kinds of arrests, as they then arrest individuals like pastors who are just observing this clear attack on immigrants across this city.
But let's say you're the mayor and you do pull back from that cooperation that's happening right now with the federal government. Are you worried about retribution from the Trump administration?
I think what we're seeing right now is that retribution exists no matter how you respond to the Trump administration. Eric Adams is collaborating at almost every juncture he can find with this administration, and still New Yorkers are being detained, and still they're taking $80 million from our municipal budget, and still they attack the fabric of our city. So clearly, surrender has not won us much. It's actually time to fight back, and we've seen the most successful examples of fighting back against Donald Trump in those that are willing to do so. And we don't have to look so far, even in the Mexican president, Claudia Sheinbaum, who's exhibited that through strength, we can actually win back the city that we love.
We heard a line from you at your recent debate. You said that you would be President Trump's worst nightmare. Tell me what that looks like in practice.
You know, I'm a Muslim progressive immigrant who actually fights for the things that I believe in. And Donald Trump is used to career politicians who he can simply influence through the fact that they all have the same donors. And we know that when it comes to Andrew Cuomo, so many of the people bankrolling his super PAC are the ones who put Donald Trump back in the White House. If Donald Trump wants to call me through my donors, he can call the more than 20,000 people who have ensured that we've broken fundraising records as we've stormed into second place.
Governor Cuomo has countered your attacks by saying that he has a lot more experience than you have as a former governor, a former HUD secretary. How do you respond to his attacks that you just aren't ready to be mayor of New York City?
You know, I think this is a moment where New Yorkers have to ask themselves what kind of experience matters. If they want the experience of a governor who had to resign in disgrace, the experience of a governor who gave Elon Musk $1 billion in tax breaks, the experience of a governor who cut Medicaid and stole hundreds of millions of dollars from the MTA, then Andrew Cuomo should be their choice. But if they want the experience of someone who actually stands up and fights for working class New Yorkers, who's won $450 million in debt relief for working class taxi drivers, and who's built a movement over the course of this campaign that has taken us from 1% to being within single digits of Andrew Cuomo, then I am the candidate for that.
Now, you have proposed creating a Department of Community Safety, as you've called it. You say it would address homelessness, mental illness, violence in the subway system, things along those lines. These are traditionally responsibilities of the police department. What would you say to people that would describe this as defunding the NYPD?
I would first make it clear to them that I'm going to sustain the headcount of the NYPD, and I would ask them to speak to police officers themselves, because that's how we crafted this plan. It was in response to the fact that so many officers join the force to take on serious crimes. And yet what they're finding is they're being asked to do the work of social workers and mental health professionals. I mean, the NYPD is responding to hundreds of thousands of mental health calls every single year. And that reliance on them to respond to almost each and every failure of the social safety net is one that is preventing them from tackling serious crimes. And that's part of the reason why 65% of those crimes from the first quarter of this year are unresolved. We want the police to be able to do their jobs, and we want to hire the mental health professionals and social workers that can actually deliver that public safety and follow on the examples of elsewhere in the country where this has already been proven successful.
We have political junkies that watch this show, so I'm sure that many understand New York has a unique situation in which you can run on more than one party line. Would you accept a run for mayor as the candidate of the Working Families Party if you are unsuccessful in the Democratic primary?
My only focus is on June 24th, and I'm confident, frankly, in our ability to win that primary. And I would say that Andrew Cuomo is nervous. It's why he's already started to create another party line that he can run on in November, because he knows that we are in.
Well, to that point, though, if you're worried that that's what Andrew Cuomo is doing, isn't that something you should have as a backup? Yes or no? Will you be a candidate in November, regardless of what happens this month?
I will be a candidate on the Democratic line. I'll tell you that.
All right. Seems like you're leaving that door open, but we appreciate you so much for being here. Thank you so much, and good luck with the rest of your campaign. Assemblyman